website, TipRanks, that permits you to go to any analyst and look at how has that analyst returned equity to you. How has he or she performed? Is he good or bad? That is what should matter, not whether they speak brilliantly, which all you guys do, but whether or not the person is good. In fact, we've been promoting to CNBC the notion that anytime an analyst is here, put a number beneath the analyst. How has that man or woman performed, just like a batting average?
Yuri, you take sort of all this data and you crunch it and you've designed an algorithm, essentially, is what you've done to come out with a ranking, a number, as the governor says.
Absolutely. So we use technologies such as machine learning and natural language processing to basically aggregate and analyze any piece of advice that is being published online. Now, while I think that this segment's main focus is analysts, we are also able to do so for much more complicated unstructured text, such as financial blogs as well. Recently, we released a feature that was also released on NASDAQ that allows you to measure your own performance and compare yourself to more than 100,000 similar investors. And so at the end of the day, what we do is we bring data-driven decision-making into Wall Street.
Look, I mean, we talk about this kind of stuff every day. In fact, on the show, we have something called the call of the day.
Yep.
And rarely is the call of the day a sell rating.
Right.
Why do you think analysts in this current environment are still reticent to slap that rating on a stock?
Look, I think it comes back to what you highlighted in the intro, access. It's very hard in any environment where you're critical of the people whom you're covering to maintain the access that you need, to get the information that you need to provide insight. That's an unfortunate truth. But what we're trying to do is provide a data-driven, as Yuri said, a data-driven answer to what should be a regulatory problem. It's very hard. We all found that out. It's very hard to create a regulatory answer to this. You can't regulate either quality or oftentimes integrity. But what you can do is give the data to the investor so the investor will know, is the analyst at Morgan Stanley good or bad? And likewise, every analyst can be rated based upon performance, which is what investors should care about.
And if you do measure their performance, their buy ratings or their sell ratings, it doesn't really matter if they issue more buy rather than sell, because it's all out there. You can see how they performed. And you mentioned Deutsche Bank and you mentioned the Bank of America and others, but if you see who are the top performing analysts of 2016, ironically enough, it was actually Deutsche Bank. They were on the top 10 of the list.
Do you also take into account their earnings estimates and how they do their...
No, we look at it from the perspective of the individual investor. If an analyst said buy the stock, we will start measuring what would happen if I listened to that analyst and bought that stock. We're not looking about the standard deviation and the differences between his earning estimates and what the company actually reported.
Over the last 2 years, I think it's something like 93 cents of every dollar going into an investment fund went into an index or a quantitative strategy that pays absolutely zero attention to Wall Street analyst rankings. When you look in the hedge fund side, all of the net money being raised is going to places like D.E. Shaw, Citadel. These are programmatic traders, also not listening to analysts. Is there any kind of concern that maybe there should be other things that you're looking at, not just the buy and sell calls on the street, given the fact that people just generally are ignoring them anyway?
Definitely. So one of the things that we're also measuring is the performance of hedge funds based on what they're reporting to the SEC. And later this year, we're also planning to start measuring all the robo-advisors that you see popping out. But you don't really know who is good and who is bad. You only know who is advertising and where.
Yuri, given the clumping that we all acknowledge happens with analysts, they all pile on one direction or the other, are you able to really get the signal out of the noise here? I mean, is there really that much discernment amongst analysts?
Absolutely. You can see that there are anywhere from 10 to 15% of the analysts that are consistent with them outperforming the markets year over year. So there are some that are good. The majority of them, it's kind of random, a lot of noise, some that would be good at a specific year and some that would be better on a different year.
So I was going to ask you about that. I mean, is there a significant amount of turnover, or do you generally find the same folks popping up on these lists for the various stocks every year?
So if you look at the top, let's say 100 or 200 over the last 5 years, right, since 2011 till now, I think that the turnover is going to be at around the 10 to 15%. It's not significant. It's not high. The majority are still there. It really depends on how you measure their performance, because if you really want to see who is good and who is not, you need to benchmark them to their own sectors, because obviously you have sectors that are going to go up and go down. And if you do that and you keep tracking the best ones in each sector, then there is definitely some consistency.
You know, just from somebody who's on the buy side and ran a hedge fund, worked at hedge funds, I really don't know anybody who really used, at the professional level, analysts for their buy and sell recommendations. It was always for every analyst we thought that was worth using was good for something, whether they're access
but whether it's almost
to a particular
whether
company.
it's used or not is not even really
But
the
Steve,
point, though.
here's the other interesting. We are also talking to the larger mass, not necessarily
Right,
hedge
and
fund
that's
guys,
what it's good for.
retail consumers who do listen to the analysts, and
Right.
we want them to have this objective
Right.
data set that permits them to understand whether or not they should.
And
Because
that's
you're
what
more
the- and
sophisticated,
that's what
I
the-
presume.
That's
right?
what the utility is for, because there's a habit. Thank you for that presumption. Because there's a habit.
That's a leap of faith.
Can you?
We'll talk
next
And that's what it's good for, because all of a sudden you hear
I'm questioning your rating system.
all of a sudden you hear Morgan Stanley recommended the stock, and you go out and say, well, Morgan Stanley did.
Precisely.
They must be right. So
Correct.
this separates that. So that's
Correct.
why it's
That's the effort.
And that's probably the reason you haven't been using it, because you didn't have TipRanks to show you who is good and who is bad. And by the way,
You're going to make analysts great again.
sorry?
Analysts great again.
Yuri Greenbaum.
If you can get through the airport.
If you can.
And we have, by the way, we have many quant hedge funds that are hooking into our APIs and trading exactly on what the best ones are saying.
And
That's a big part
some
of our
of those quant
business.
programs do use what analysts
Those
say.
inputs.
Just so it's clear,
themselves.
not to shamelessly promote the company, but I will. Some of the largest banks and trading platforms in the country have hired us precisely because they want this data to factor into the algorithms.
They may fade it, but they at least want to know. Like,
At least
what
they're paying us.
Right. Fair enough.
All right, guys, thank you.